Welcome to what should be the first of many editions of Got Hockey Tips. When I started Got Hockey, I wanted to introduce my audience to interesting people and stories, and also help new players and parents with some of the finer details of the game that maybe more of my hockey savvy viewers and listeners are already aware of. Today, we're going to talk about the right way to attach a dangler to your goalie mask. Now, there are many right ways to do this, but I'm going to show you the way I prefer, and I'm going to explain along the way why I do it the way I do it. Leave a comment and please like and subscribe. Now, let's get to it.
First, it's always great to start with a nice clean workspace. What I want to do is put the first string through the center. I don't want any additional bars getting in the way, and I don't want the lace to be able to travel up and down or side to side. I'm going to slide the tips of the laces in right near the screws. There's usually a little bit of extra area there. If you need to, you can always loosen up the cage slightly, and that'll give you probably just that little bit of a gap that you might need. Once I get the tips of the laces through, I'm just going to work them to the middle. And I like running both ends through because what that allows me to do is pull some out, and I'm going to pull the rest through, but watch, I'm going to loop it back through itself. This is going to hold everything in place because now I'm essentially just wrapping the lace around that center bottom bar. It can't move up and down, and it doesn't really have anywhere to go side to side because it's in between those two center bars. I'm making sure also to pull mostly through the one side. So now when I trim these down, I'm only going to have one long lace left, and I can still use that for the rest and not have to worry about cutting one side too short. I'm going to slide each end through the center hole. And then I'm just going to make one knot using both laces. Just take your time with this. You don't want to make it too long. You don't want to make it too short. Try to keep the laces straight. It ends up just looking better, hanging better. And again, we want just that little bit of overlap to make sure that the dangler can't come down underneath when you look up. And there's my knot. That's going to be nice and big. It won't pull through the other side. And before you pull it too tight, I always like to just have a quick look and make sure that I'm not allowing it to be too long, not allowing it to be too short. Cinch up that knot on either end and give it a snip. And I'm just going to take a lighter now, melt the two ends of the lace together. We don't want any fraying. Please be careful, as always, when you're using a lighter. And maybe you should wear a glove before you pinch that. Just be careful because obviously it's hot. And now we'll move to the right side of the mask. There is a plate on the cage where the identification sticker is, so sometimes on this side it's a little bit trickier, but once you've done it a few times, usually it's fairly easy to get it through. I've trimmed both tips off at this point. This allows me to more easily slide it under and then back out over top of the main side frame bar. Same step as we did on the first. Just going to pull it all the way through once we're there. And that again is going to only allow it to move very slightly up and down, but it won't allow it to move side to side. So that's going to hold everything in place, and gravity should keep it close to the bottommost bar. Now, as you can see on here, I did have a little bit of a tricky time. The end of my lace did start to fray a little bit. Just going to clip a little bit off. going to use the lighter again just to melt those ends together so I can have almost a new tip that I can get through. And once that is through, I'm going to repeat the same process as I used on the front. We're going to take both ends and tie one large knot that won't pull through the other side. Again, just making sure it's not hanging down too far. If your head's to the side or you're turning, you want to make sure that nothing's going to catch on the bottom of the mask. But of course, we also want to make sure that we're low enough still that we're getting the maximum amount of coverage. Give it one last quick check before you move on. Cinch up the knot. Give it a snip. And let's melt those ends again. When we start doing the left side, there's no restriction. There's no identification sticker and no plate attached, so they move in quite easily. I'm just using the lighter to flatten out those ends. That's going to simply just go through, and again, just like we did on the other two, pulling back to get that loop. And yep, you guessed it, same strategy. We're just pulling those both through, finding the correct distance, making sure it's even on the right and the left side, and then it works well with the middle to keep everything in place properly. And this is why we take our time when we're doing it, just in case we have to go back a little bit and make that knot a little bit shorter. You really want to make sure it's nice and even that way for obvious reasons. It's going to protect the same on both sides, and it's going to hang straight. Now that's looking good and even on all sides. One last snip. I do want to remind everyone to please be very careful with scissors. Fortunately, no goalie specialists were harmed in the making of this video. And we melt those ends and we're pretty much done. One last check to make sure everything's even, and you're ready for the ice. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.